Hello everyone, and thank you for being part of the sixth keynote that we've got here at iMoot. I'm Dom Sneak, one of the iMoot coordinators, and we've got Kristina Ho with us from Catalyst IT in New Zealand, and she'll be presenting e-portfolios for Moodle users. Thank you, Kristina.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Dom. Since we've already been chatting quite a bit, I assume that the audio works out well for everyone so far. But if you do have any problems with the audio, please let me know. Before I kind of get into the presentation itself, I'd kind of like to know who is actually already using Mahara here within the audience. I recognize some familiar names, so I know that there are some who have already been using it. But what I'd also like to know is for how long you have been using it, if you are already a user of Mahara. Just so that we all here in the session, we are about 20, can get a feel of where everyone is coming from and whether they've already heard about it or whether they are just starting out or are already some proficient users. I know, for example, that Siggy, as one of the very early users of Mahara, so almost right after it came out, so she's probably been the one that has been using it the longest in here. So we have a very good mix from people who have looked at it but not implemented to very long users, 2 to 3 years, and those that are just getting their feet wet in it. So that's actually a really nice mix because what I try to do is give a high-level overview of Mahara and also how it can help Moodle and why there is actually a second learning environment that people are using next to Moodle. And then there will be enough time at the end of the session for us to get a conversation started or also having questions asked and then answers given, either by me or also by those in the audience who are also very proficient Mahara users. I'll try to monitor the chat as best as possible, but if I miss a question, please repeat it later on and draw the attention to it so that we can certainly answer it. Okay, now, who am I actually? Well, I've been a member of the Mahara core development team since June 2010, so by now almost 3 years, and that was when I moved to Wellington to work for Catalyst IT. And since then, one of my roles was also to be active in the community, be available for community members to answer questions and also to help. And what I do on a regular basis is report bugs and also report wishlist items, so features that I'd like to see implemented or that I heard other people want to implement in Mahara or want to have implemented. Besides that, I also test things in Mahara. And that means that when the question comes in, I just try to figure out the problem, or in the case of badges, how can we implement them already, even though Mahara is not yet a backpack. And so that is quite nice, being able to test all existing features, but then also new features as part of the review process that we have in Mahara. And that is also where I'm involved in by testing features before they actually get implemented into a stable version. And very occasionally, I also contribute code directly to Mahara, but not so much as programming code, but more in terms of making language string fixes or fixing up very small errors that do not really require any coding experience because I'm not a developer. But most importantly, I'm responsible for the Mahara user manual, which we started writing for Mahara version 1.4, and we have been updating it now throughout the years up to version 1.7, and I continue updating it for future versions as well. And the very nice thing is that it has already been translated into a number of languages, in particular German, by primarily Ralf Hilbenstock, and Siggy also helped. and some others in the German community, but also French by Dominique Alanjan, who is also our primary French translator for the software itself. And also the Dutch Mahara user manual is coming along nicely. And a few other languages have already started, but it is really a big job to translate the entire user manual simply because it is so large. And so these are just a few of the things that I do in the community on a regular basis throughout the week, and then also have tried to help not just our clients at Catalyst, but the wider Mahara community in general. There is a Japanese version of the manual, but MITS is still in the process of writing it, and therefore we have not made it public yet, because I think last time I checked it was around 6 or 7%. However, Mahara itself is fully translated into Japanese, and MITS is usually one of the translators who gets on to fixing a language string as soon as it's being put into Launchpad, our translation system. And of course, everyone can help translating the manual as well. It is available on Launchpad, and so all you really need is just a web browser, and then you can type your translations into the interface, but you can also download all the language strings and translate on your computer. Okay, so why do you actually now need a Mahara when you already have Moodle? Heinz Hood said it really nicely during announcing, or while announcing the Mahara DE conference this September, and he said Moodle is theirs and Mahara is yours. So that means that Moodle is usually set up by an educational institution, and teachers have the full control. They decide what is being used in there, which activities a student can participate in, which forum discussions they can participate in, and also when they can upload files into assignments and so on. And that, of course, leaves most of the control in the teacher's hands, but not so much in the students, because students really only can do what the teacher allows them to do. Whereas Mahara, on the other hand, because it is yours, means that the learner is in full control over their own portfolio. They decide what they want to keep, they decide what needs to go in there, and they also decide who can have access to it. Of course, that does not mean that the teacher will never get access to a portfolio, because that can still be a requirement of a course. However, the student can collect much, much more than what a teacher requires for a particular subject, for example. And when you put these two platforms together, so Mahara and Moodle, because that is quite a common combination, there was even a term coined for it, and that is Mahoodle. And if you want to know more about what people do also with Mahoodle and how it is being set up, and a very good overview of the two differences between the systems, then I highly recommend you watch Siggy's talk that she gave this year at the iMoot either session. And there you get a very good insight into also how she has been using Mahara with her students, and also why you would want to choose one over the other. And there have been a couple of other presentations here at the iMoot where Mahara was mentioned and also shown. So once the videos are up, in terms of also where the screen sharing recordings are displayed, then you'll see directly some examples of how people have been using Mahara in conjunction with Moodle at their institutions. So the next few minutes, I'd really like to focus more on the Mahara side, because most of you are already really proficient users of Moodle. And just to give you an idea of what you can actually do in the software. And so Mahara itself, and what you can do with Moodle and Mahara is that, and that's why you connect these two with each other, is that you can pull content from Moodle directly into Mahara by using the Portfolio API, which is built into Moodle, so that you can transfer files that you uploaded for an assignment, for example, directly into your Mahara file repository, or also form entries that you have made. You can send them directly over into Mahara. Then, conversely, you can also pull content from Mahara directly into Moodle, or at least make it visible. And that is achieved by using the Mahara Assignment Submission plugin, which currently still requires the Moodle Assignment 2.2 type, but in future we hope to also make it available as part of the now regular assignment type that has been available since Moodle 2.3. And that assignment submission plugin allows you to create the portfolios directly on Mahara, but the teacher can use all the grading functionalities and possibilities from within Moodle. Since Moodle now has a rubric grading possibility, and I believe that has been in there now already for a year, that way the teacher can assess a Mahara portfolio using that rubric and also put any assessment data into the gradebook or use the outcomes within Moodle, and therefore everything can also be stored in Moodle, whereas the student keeps all artifacts and their portfolio in their own area. And of course, because they use Mahara, they can also save much more in their own area, in their own portfolio, and create many more portfolios that go beyond the scope of what a teacher might want for one individual course. Gavin, I don't yet have an ETA for the new assignment type. At the Moodle Mahara meetup in Adelaide at the beginning of May, we talked about the possibilities of expanding it and which features teachers would like to see in there. And so now we are in the process of also seeing who might want to fund expanding that functionality, because we were not just going to integrate it with the Moodle 2.3 assignment type, but also allow for exporting of portfolios, for example, for archiving purposes, since educational institutions usually need to keep a record for at least a couple of years in case the student contests the grade. And that would be one possibility in there, and also seeing that we can get away from the iMoot integration, but use LTI integration instead. And yes, usually, at least also for universities, it's definitely much longer. And therefore, implementing such a feature would be really beneficial, because currently we do not yet have any version control in Mahara, and therefore as soon as the page is released back to the student, they can make any changes and the teacher would not be able to see what they had actually graded. Therefore, having that export functionality in there would be fantastic. Mm-hmm. So Mahara itself is a Te Reo Māori word, and it means to think in Te Reo Māori. And that is one of the very big prerequisites for keeping a portfolio, that a thinking process is initiated, and that then is the basis of everything else that is being done in the portfolio. Next, when you want to create a portfolio, it is of course also important that you actually have some content that you can put into your portfolio. And you can create content directly in Mahara, either by writing notes or by keeping a journal, or also by writing your CV directly online, or creating to-do lists or plans for professional development. However, a lot of times, we actually have our content sitting on our computer, and therefore Mahara also allows you just to store these files that you have already created elsewhere directly in its file repository and make it available in Pages. Nowadays, in addition to having files sitting on a computer, so any essays or songs or musical scores or things that you might have written, we also use a lot of external or a lot of media online in order to create content. And therefore, it must be possible for Mahara to also aggregate all that content. And that means that we can embed external content created on pages, sites such as YouTube or SlideShare or Prezi and Woki or Glogster directly in Mahara. Because we do not have the capabilities to provide the same tools to learners, and therefore we make use of these other tools and just display everything within the context then. Another very important feature of an e-portfolio system and the e-portfolio process in general is that you need to reflect. And reflection is a key element of the portfolio process because through reflection can we actually improve our learning, improve our perception, and also enhance what we have been doing already and improve things. And that's why we have a journal functionality within Mahara, and that also allows you not just to create one journal, but you can create as many journals as you want so that you can also keep things separate, and you also have tagging functionality available. And that leads me straight into the next point, which means that once you have uploaded all your content, collected your content in Mahara, you then need to organize it in order to make sense of the content and not just have an archive or a heap of files and links available, but really see where the connections are between them all. And organization can happen on many levels. You can organize your files in folders, or you can organize your journal entries and have them in separate journals, or also tag all your content that you upload or that you create on Mahara. And since version Mahara 1.7, which we released in April this year, you can also attach a license to your content so that you even know in future how you want to make that content available under which license, and if you integrate works from others, that you know under which license you're allowed to do that. And yes, all my pictures, they do have the license information on the bottom of the slides. They are all Creative Commons license photos, usually with the BY or BY SA attribution, and that means also you're very welcome to use them. Now, after the organization process, it is time that you get ready for presenting your portfolio. Though we often also say that portfolios can be created just for your own, you don't need to show your portfolio to anyone. Most of the time, I think we do want to show our portfolios to somebody else, either to get feedback from them or just to show them what we have done. And that presentation can happen in many, many different forms. You can present just your best work, so you can create a showcase, show off what you have learned within a year, how well you are doing, or you can show the process that you have gone through over the last year and really show where you started and where you ended up now, and show how well you have developed over the years or where you have also experienced some setback. And you also want to present content for assessment purposes, so that a teacher, for example, can give you a grade or can use a rubric in order to give you feedback on what you have learned or on any project that you have done. And so that presentation happens in Mahara in the actual portfolio pages, because all the content that you have created earlier on or that you've uploaded or linked is only visible to you. And only when you share that content with somebody else can they actually see it. And that sharing can also, again, take many different forms, because in contrast to a lot of sites that we are using on a regular basis online, where there's only the possibility to make something public or to make something private, on Mahara we have very granular permission rules available, which allow you to make a portfolio available just to one teacher or just to your group of friends or only for one group, whereas you can also share it with everyone in the world for a specific period of time. So that is entirely up to you as the portfolio owner, with whom and for how long you want to share portfolio with them. And that is important for the portfolio because we do not just want to say, oh, everything goes according to one rule, but learners should be able to make the decision with whom they want to share something. Because especially when they use portfolios for professional development or also for professional improvement, they may not really want to share that with everyone, not even with everyone in a class or in a course that they are participating in. And therefore, it is necessary that you can decide very specifically with whom you want to share something. Now, all of these things that I've just mentioned up to now are pretty much individual tasks. You create content and can collect content, you organize your content, you aggregate content, you reflect on your learning, and then you present your learning. With the aspect of sharing your portfolio, and the collaboration comes into play. And sharing also gives you the chance to solicit feedback from others. And collaboration and giving feedback, engaging with other learners is very important, not just these days, but it has already been important for a very long time. But in Mahara, we make this possible because everyone can leave feedback on portfolio pages as long as the portfolio owner allows for it. That then makes it possible that your feedback can be incorporated into your own learning, and that you grow through that feedback and can take it on as well. Because if you have a paper portfolio, a lot of times you might have talked it through with a teacher, but afterwards there wasn't any record of it. Whereas using an online system that has feedback functionality enabled, you can now make that feedback part of your portfolio, revisit it, somebody else can also listen to it or read it later on, and you can always go from there. And feedback does not necessarily have to be provided in written form, but you can also attach files. Audio, video files are also annotated files if you give feedback directly on the file, and have all that put into a user's portfolio, which then enriches the portfolio itself. Yes, really, you can send your feedback. And that is actually what a number of language teachers do who use Mahara, because when they use the portfolio for student projects, and the students need to speak a dialogue or perform something, then the teachers actually give audio feedback, because then they can also pronounce the words and can correct the students much better than if they just said, well, here's the phonetic annotation. By just giving that audio feedback, the learning experience is much more enriched. And of course, Gavin could wrap in his feedback as well. So collaboration is not just for collaborating on portfolios or on giving feedback on portfolios, but you can collaborate in groups and also create group portfolios, upload files together, and really create pages together that you as group want to form. And that is also part of the networking which is possible on Mahara, because within a group you instantly have forums available to you that you can use, and you can also set up the networks the way you want. So you can set up an entirely open network that anyone with a login can join, or you can say, well, this network is just for one group, and I want to set it up as a class group so that all the students in this class also need to be in this group and cannot get out. And therefore, networking can take, again, many different shapes, and you can set up as many groups as you want, as long as of course, the site administrator allows for that. And so just to sum this part up, I hope I have shown that for Mahara, the learner, that is you, is always in the center of the attention. Then a lot of times, of course, we use Mahara as part of an institutional experience, and often alongside Moodle, because these two work very well together, so that you do all the formal learning on Moodle and more informal things or collecting of learning artifacts over a longer period of time directly in Mahara. And that, of course, means that you interact with the institution and you get feedback from teachers on assessment portfolios, or you can also get peer feedback from students. And therefore, that is kind of the normal institutional relationship. However, since Mahara also allows you to make things public and share things with a wider audience, you are also becoming part of the community around you, around that institution, and you can also interact with that community. People outside of Mahara can also give feedback to the portfolio if you made it publicly available or if you shared it with a secret URL. Siggy has some really nice examples in her presentation on Moodle, how she used Mahara with students in her vocational school when they were in an internship. And so that shows that this relationship, the portfolio building, does not just happen for the educational institution, but that it influences the community life and that it goes into the community as well, and that students can also reflect on things that they've done over there. And as last part, since the community is then also part of the entire world, of course, you as learner also engage with that world and get feedback from there. Again, you can make pages public or collections, portfolio collections public, and receive feedback from anybody in the world. And having that possibility to work with others helps everyone to grow together, to learn from each other, to improve their learning, to help each other out. And that is, I think, what makes the e-portfolio system so fantastic and the features of Mahara, because it is not just for an individual to keep their learning artifacts and feedback, but it also involves other people, and it can involve as many people as you wish and as the platform allows you, especially when you want to make portfolios public. Let me just look at the chat very briefly. This looks to me like social media, which is education-oriented, says Farah. And yes, that's definitely the case. And a lot of people don't use Facebook or any other platform that is also freely available out there, where you can just log in, because they do want to tie it to their institution, and they do want to give their own terms and conditions and not rely on anything from any of the other providers. And also to focus it more on the institution. However, what you can also do is have a Mahara instance that is not tied to an institution, where students and learners can keep their portfolios for a very long time. Or you could, if you use a Mahara instance at your school, your students can export their portfolios and put it into any other Mahara instance. And that then allows you to keep your portfolio for a really long time and not just for the time that you're in school. Because the disadvantage also of just storing everything in Moodle, for example, or also other learning management systems, is that usually that content goes away. And so the student will not have access to it anymore, either already at the end of a semester or latest at the end of their study program. Whereas if they push their content directly into Mahara, then they can keep their content there, and they can keep their learning artifacts there, and can store them where they will have them always accessible. And even when they leave an institution, and in the end, they can take their portfolio with them, all bundled up either as HTML website, or they can also store it as so-called in the so-called Leap2A format, which allows them to import their portfolio into any other Mahara site. Yes, HTML isn't so nice yet, because it just has a standard format, but that is definitely also an area that could be worked on in the future to make that more attractive. Siggy. Okay, now let's take a look at Mahara as software and talk a little bit about what is possible there. So Mahara was, the development work on Mahara started back in 2006 through funding from an e-learning fund here in New Zealand for tertiary institutions, and a number of universities were involved. And from the beginning, Catalyst was the development partner, and since then we have been the lead development company for Mahara. But we also have partners around the world, oftentimes also Moodle partners, who offer services for customizations, design, training, and so on. But like Moodle, Mahara is open source, and therefore you can just go to our website, download it, and use it as is. So you can just use it as like it comes out of the box. However, you could also customize it whichever way you want. And yeah, so you can give it a new skin, you can paint it really, really nicely, or you can also install plugins or develop your own plugins, or even change core code. And all that is possible because Mahara is open source software. You have access to the entire core code and can do with it whatever you like. Mahara is being used around the world in many, many different institutions. Small institutions, big institutions, very large institutions. As far as I know, the biggest Mahara site is the one that we have here in New Zealand, which Siggy already just mentioned, myportfolio.school.nz, because we have over 1,200 schools connected to it, and that means by now close to 60,000 active users and over 85 registered users. So on any given day during the week, there are by now usually slightly under or slightly over 2,000 users logging in, working on their portfolios, communicating with each other, working in groups, and sometimes also just having fun, especially when they are students, just writing wall messages or uploading pictures. And even on weekends, we see a lot of activity, usually around 500 or different users being logged in, which is quite a bit for an educational platform that is not always even used for assessment purposes, but where students can also engage with each other and just use it to chat. Around the world, Mahara is being used in schools, universities, other tertiary institutions, and also associations that especially require competency assessment and also certification for skills and competencies, because these can be presented very nicely in simple web pages. Files can be uploaded, but also reflections put directly on there. And though we have not yet at all reached the user base that Moodle has, usually there are around 300 institutions registered with Mahara.org, but many, many more are using the software. They are just not registering it. So we don't actually know how many people in the world use that software. And now also in Germany, there is a Mahara instance that is being set up for many multiple institutions, and there are also some other providers, for example, portfolio communities out of Canada, who offer the hosting of individual portfolios for Mahara enthusiasts to keep their portfolios for free and continue building it once they have left an institution, or even when they are within an institution. And so once you have started using Mahara, you might find, oh my gosh, what are all these settings? What do I have to do here? How does it work? And you might be a bit lost. So don't despair, because Mahara, like Moodle, has a very vibrant community, and there are many, many people out there who can help you and who can also give you advice and share their stories of how they have been using Mahara over the years or over the month. So you have translators, you have core developers, you have contributors, you have people just using the software and asking questions, and then others giving answers. And you don't necessarily even need to know English. There are also communities of German speakers, French speakers, and also Japanese and Spanish speakers at least, who can help you further along. The English-speaking community, of course, is still the biggest community, and that's where also most of the developers are, who can then give you advice if you have problems with the installation, or if you want to know what, where you can find a certain feature to adjust it or to make bigger changes to it. And that community is online, and we now also have a number of user groups coming up or springing up. And the biggest one is the Mahara user group out of the United States that usually meets every 2 or 3 months online, and so far once a year in New York, already for the 2nd time last year. And that Mahara user group is joined by another user group that was established in November last year in Germany. And they usually have face-to-face meetings, and already had their 2nd meeting back in April, and discuss new features, also how other people are using Mahara, and share what they have been doing on their own platforms. So Siggy can definitely talk more about that as well, because she has been at these meetings. And since she just put in the Mahara Moot in September, now with more users around the world, there are also unconferences throughout the year, and the most well-known one is Mahara UK, which takes place from the 4th to the 5th of July this year in Birmingham. And you can still submit presentations for that, and not just presentations for you to travel to Birmingham, but if you cannot go there but would still like to show what you have been doing with Mahara, you can also propose a virtual presentation, and just head over to maharauk.org and submit your proposal. Right now, I just got kicked out of my own meeting room, so just please give me a second. I'll be right with you. Yeah, New Zealand is a bit far away, so we are at the end of the road. So usually we do happen to have some internet problems, but I'll be right where I was. Yeah, and so I briefly mentioned the French Mahara Moot, which will be in June, and in September from the 20th to the 21st, there'll also be a Mahara Moot, the first one, in Germany, and that is going to be an unconference. And there are already many, many good discussions going on. And that also shows you that there is not only the need to discuss things, but also to discuss things in person, so that people can actually get together, talk about their experiences. Moodle frequently also plays a role in there, how they can connect it, and so on. And that's what makes the community. It is not just something that you see online, but there are actually also real people behind it. So now you might wonder, well, where are all these links that you've been, or where can I find all these resources that you've been talking about? And if you go to that link, it is also in the Moodle course for this keynote on iMoot. And there I have collected a number of links that help you explore the community, that take you to the community itself, to the demo version, to the newsletter in which all the events are announced. and also show you some examples, let you explore further examples, and so on. So take that as a springboard to make your Mahara explorations. And I also have a bonus for you that you can check out after this keynote, because showing video while in screen sharing is usually not the best idea. So I'll just provide you with the link. Again, it is the video is actually also just embedded in the Moodle course for the keynote. And that video shows you, just within a very short period of time, the activity on myportfolio.school.nz over an entire day. To make it even shorter, I just chose the first 10 minutes of each hour. And as you will be able to see in the video, there is quite a bit of activity no matter which time of the day it is. Definitely during the day, more activity than at night, but even at 2 or 3 a.m., there is still activity on the portfolio side. And that means that learning really takes place 24/7 and that people access that at any point during the day or even during the night. And if you have any questions, please feel free to connect with all the Mahara users and developers on mahara.org. And also send me an email or send me a Twitter message and get in touch with me. I'm always happy to help and see how we can answer your questions and get you started with Mahara, and also then, of course, integrating it with Moodle or potentially other systems that you might have, so that you can create a learning environment which does not just consist of a learning management system, but that has many different tools incorporated that your users or that your learners use on a regular basis, because it is more about the learning environment in general than any particular tool by itself in isolation. And now I think we still have about 15 minutes for questions. And I'm happy to take any, either put them into the chat or also use the mic to ask your questions. And if I have missed any from earlier in the chat, please repeat them again so we can get you sorted. Yeah, so there are a number of Facebook groups now springing up. That is the Mahara DE Facebook group, the one for the Mahara DE conference. The Mahara user group also has a Facebook group, but we also have forums on mahara.org, so that you do not really necessarily need to become a Facebook member in order to participate in community discussions. That was also very important to us, to make sure that though we are in the media that everyone is using, that we also have the possibility to connect with everyone outside of these gated communities where people might not really want to set up shop. And there is also a LinkedIn group that sees more activity these days, so that it can be quite difficult to actually be everywhere, because Mahara is now in so many places and not just anymore the community side. Questions are now being asked everywhere, so that it can be challenging sometimes to find them all and to ensure that users get their answers. Yeah, dispersed community is nowadays, I think, the fact, because there are so many different channels and places available where users already are, that they, of course, also want to continue communicating there and not just necessarily go into yet another tool, sign up for yet another account, only to have a discussion that they think they can also have in their own environment. But on the other hand, it is also nice to see that the community uses so many different tools, because that also means that there is the need for discussion, that they do want to discuss it wherever they are, and see it as a regular part of their life then, and don't really make the distinction, okay, that is now this community and now I don't discuss it over here, but that everything comes together. students definitely use a lot of different channels, and that is what we can also use in Mahara, because through the embed code it is quite easy to bring all these different channels, all media created there, into Mahara and allow for that to be aggregated there. Okay, let me scroll back a little and see if I missed anything. Sergio's question, if you add Mahara to your Moodle, won't this have a considerable impact on your server speed? It does not really have impact on your server speed, does it? But it does have impact on your server space. Because if your files are stored in Moodle and then students export them to Mahara, they are also available there, and so they are duplicated. However, what will hopefully be possible in the future is that there are more repository possibilities. Gregor Anselci from Slovenia, he has already worked on the cloud storage plugin, which allows you to connect a number of cloud storage spaces to Mahara, so that you don't actually need another storage space on Mahara, but you can use all the file areas that you have already been using before then. That definitely cuts down on storage, and that's where you can also allow your Mahara users to have fewer megabytes available and store most of their things elsewhere. And so like Moodle has several repository options, Mahara so far has in the cloud storage plugin Dropbox and also SkyDrive, and I believe also Google Apps, whereas Google Apps can also be integrated already easily within Iframe. So that can also be made available for simply embedding files in your pages that you use in Iframe for that. Many concurrent users, Sergio, that depends on what many is, because many for some is not many for others. And so that would need to be looked at. But normally from a server perspective, concurrent users is also termed slightly differently. So sometimes it is really up just to the millisecond, whereas others mean concurrent users by accessing the same page. So when your server is spec'd nicely and gives enough RAM for PHP, but also for the database, then you can happily work with Moodle and Mahara on one server. It all depends on how big your institution is, how much activity you're seeing, how you want to work with things, with files, and so on, and how much actually there is concurrent usage. Thanks for coming, Maureen, and have a nice afternoon, evening.
Kristina, yes, excuse me for unmuting myself. I just posted a question.
No, that's fine.
I would like you to hint to the possibility that as the students are now the masters of their content, that they are also allowed to embed objects, which they cannot do in Moodle, because in Moodle the teacher is the master, and that there is now the possibility via the Iframe feature to integrate practically everything from a Padlet to a voice thread and everything you have an embed a code to integrate into the Mahara site. Maybe you could say a few words on that. Thank you.
Yes, Siggy, that is correct. Because we have, well, normally iframes aren't allowed for security reasons, like on Moodle, where you also need to make iframes available first. But we do have the functionality of the allowed iframe sources. Let me find that manual page while talking. And that allows a site administrator quite easily to allow certain iframes that they know are legit and don't cause any problems. And then students as well as teachers or anybody else on the platform can embed this iframe, can use that copying and pasting is not so easy. They can use that that regular embed code to make external content available, and that external content can then be embedded into journal posts, into regular notes, and also external content, making it very versatile to bring in the content from other sites. And so just yesterday we had, because badges are so popular this year with the unveiling in Moodle 2.5, that Siggy wanted to embed her badges earned in iMoot in Mahara. And because Mahara is not yet a backpack for badges, the easiest way was to use an iframe. And so we created an iframe for her so that she can now show off her badges on her Mahara page. And that is a simple way of showing off your badges, but because that iframe for the badges doesn't tell you whether you are actually the recipient of these badges, we still need the backpack to really verify that you are actually you who you pretend to be. But in the case of Siggy, of course, she's earned all her badges legitimately. Siggy, did you just create a screen? Oh, did you make a screenshot? Yeah, of these allowed iframe sources. And you can add as many as you want there. So we already have some in there pre-made, but you can add many, many more, and therefore allow everyone to go to these sources. And yes, because of the security risk of the iframes, only certain ones that the site administrator said are really confirmed and allowed can be embedded, so that you can just make up any iframe and show off content where nobody really knows where it comes from, but that it's really from a site such as YouTube, where there is a proper iframe code available already that this then is allowed through. There is no built-in single sign-on from Facebook to Mahara, but there is the Generate plugin, Jens, which allows you to log in to Mahara with any with a number of social media logins that are out there, and you could use that for that. And yes, that cookie bar, that is pretty new, so that will also be something that we need to make note of and find a solution for, so that people can continue using the sites. If iframes are not allowed, then usually when you embed something, there is a URL where you can actually just view that content. So normally you are then taken directly there. But Stuart, most of the iframes that we allow are from sites such as SlideShare, YouTube, Woki, Glogster, Blip, and so on, where there is an official iframe which does not actually lead you to the page, but to the content item directly. And therefore you don't embed an entire page, but more like the individual item that you would normally see directly on the page. In terms of storage allocation, for my portfolio.school.nz, every user has up to 1 GB of storage available. And of course, if you calculate that and multiply that times over 56,000 registered ones and over 56,000 active users and over 86,000 registered users, that could potentially be quite a lot of terabytes. However, most users have not yet used their allocated or their available space and exceeded their quota because they are oftentimes linking to external documents like private YouTube channels or also Google Documents, and do not all upload video. But then we also limited the file size upload to 50 megabytes per file, so that it's not being used for storing lots of big videos. Garrett, what's the future of Mahara? What's the next big thing to happen with it? Well, I think it's safe to say that the next big thing to happen is full text search, because we are currently working on it. And that will definitely go into the release in October. And once we have it in code review, you're very welcome, and everyone is invited to test that feature or any other feature that is being proposed for Mahara, so that we can ensure that it's as implemented in the best possible way. We are also looking at making it possible for users to import their own portfolios into Mahara, instead of always having to go through a site administrator or an institution administrator, and also for having the possibility to import a portfolio into an existing account, so that if your institution already created your account, but you want to bring a Mahara portfolio from your previous school, then you can should be able in the future to put all that together in one account and not having to mess around with copying and pasting and so on. We are also looking at a few more functionalities that we'll also start discussing in the forums. So one discussion that we are planning to take up very shortly is the one about having pages available in multiple collections, and also of sharing pages that are part of a collection outside of that collection. So if you're interested in these things, we'll start that discussion again on mahara.org sometime soon, and you're welcome to chip in and give us your opinion of what you think might be a good way of implementing it. And another feature, which is slightly smaller than the ones that I've just been talking about, we are also looking at making it so that when you accidentally close, or when you're about to accidentally close a window or navigate away from a text box that you're currently writing, that you get a pop-up message which says, well, do you really want to go away, or do you want to stay on the page, so that accidental deletion of things don't happen so much anymore. Thank you very much for your kind words, Jens. And Livy, you will see most of the features already mid-year before the release of Mahara 1.8, because many of the features that I've just mentioned are funded by the New Zealand Ministry of Education for my portfolio, but we are in the very lucky position that we can implement them in core Mahara, and therefore we try to put many of these features already into my portfolio.school.nz as soon as possible, and that usually means around term 3, so that our teachers in New Zealand can already experiment with them. But I cannot yet exactly say which features that will be, because most of them are still in development. Richard, I think the best thing would be to move to a Linux server. But Mahara actually does work on a Windows server, but there may be more debugging involved. And so any information on that, if you have gone through the experience, would be fantastic if you added that to the wiki. Because like Moodle, Mahara lives from the community, from community contributions, and what everybody contributes, so that others can benefit from it as well. Libby, unfortunately, I do not yet know that answer whether the ministry is going to fund my portfolio further. That is still something that they are being decided on. Jens, which Mahara partner are you with? We have a number of Mahara partners, but many are many are not so active in the community, and therefore I cannot really talk about them too much. And yes, Libby, we do host your Moodle, and we also host my portfolio, but that, as I said earlier, is available to to all institutions or to all schools in New Zealand. Okay. Well, it seems like that people are heading off to be elsewhere to prepare for the next session, or to have lunch, dinner, breakfast, or a good night's sleep. Before more people head off, I'd just like to say thank you very much for attending my session on Mahara, and also using Mahara for Moodle and in conjunction with Moodle. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me or drop me a message on mahara.org, and I'll get back in touch with you. It was nice to see some very familiar faces and names in here, but also new ones, and I hope to continue seeing you in the Mahara community.
And thank you, Kristina, from behalf of the iMoot team for that excellent presentation. And by all the people lingering on and on wanting to know more about Mahara, that was excellent, and we really appreciate the presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you for moderating, Dom.